call the meeting to order.
Yeah, or
Start with the
CD,
pledge, please.
whatever.
Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Take the roll, please.
Butler,
Here.
Jordan. Here. Oakridge.
Here.
Smith. Here. Thomas.
Here.
Rash.
Here.
Vincent.
Here.
All members are present.
Okay, thank you everybody for coming this evening. To the public. Okay, first item on the agenda is the minutes from the February 7th meeting. Has everyone received the latest copy of the minutes, and does anyone have any questions? Okay, if everybody's received them, there's no questions on the minutes, we will at this time entertain a motion to accept the minutes as sent out.
So moved.
A motion and a second. Take a roll call vote, please.
Butler,
Yes.
Jordan.
Abstain.
Oakridge.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Rash.
Yes.
Vincent.
Yes.
6 members in favor, 1 abstention.
Okay, February 7th minutes have been approved. Nothing on new business. We have received under correspondence a letter from Woda Cooper Companies. Has everyone received a copy of that? This basically, as I understand it, pretty much self-explanatory. They want to build a facility outside the city limits, and I think they're asking for comments from council, whether or not it's good, bad, indifferent, or not that we have any say on it, but that they do want input from the city if at all possible. So if anyone wants to make any comment at this at a later time, or have any questions on the letter that everyone should have got a copy, I think Jacob sent that out. So that's what that letter is for. And I think there's a phone number and address there who you can address comments to.
Are they planning to make a presentation, or this is?
No,
the
it's
only
just out of the
spot?
city limits. It's out across, pretty much from where you go up into Untitled, back in that area, down in that area there. But my understanding is they just want
Well,
input from the
It's
city.
not, it's down from the Eagles.
Oh, that's right, it's on the
Yeah.
other side, okay.
The way this housing tax program thing works, the more favorable comments they get, it literally becomes a scoring system to some degree. But the more favorable comments they get, that increases their chances of getting those housing tax credits. And in essence, for us, I mean, we, a few of us should do it. I'll be happy, I'm gonna be happy, I'll do something, but, the county's done this before for, these types of things. And of course, the city knows that Mr. Woda built, what's the name of the development down below the park?
Above the-
Yeah, Ashburn, yeah, that's Mr. Woda, and we did that, you know, I think when that was done, the county did something, even though it was in the city of St. Clairsville. So while he doesn't really ask us to do that, I think that's what they're looking for, and quite frankly, it's a situation where it would benefit the city indirectly, as far as people coming into the city. If we have more housing there, people coming into the city and patronizing our businesses and what have you. So if anybody wants to take the time, and it doesn't have to be anything super formal, just go ahead. And I think that's in essence what will help this project move forward.
Mark, are you suggesting it could be helpful if there was something from the council?
We could do
We've done
that.
before, as we supported
Yeah.
various.
I mean, we could do a resolution in support of this project. That's up to council. It certainly would help him. It's something, if council has wants to do something like that, I can get with the law director and have her draft up just a resolution that we could adopt as quickly as it's needed and go from there. I mean, what's your pleasure?
It says 30 days of this notice, February 3rd.
Jim, I'd have to, maybe something to point out to council is that, I mean, if they are thinking of developing there, it's outside the city, but if they wanted to utilize any city utilities, you know, water, sewer, electric, they should annex into the city. Increasing our population is a huge goal for us as a council, and.
I was gonna ask, was there any talk about that?
This is so
Did it come up?
preliminary with they may or may not receive the funds.
Okay,
We supply electric through that area anyways already.
okay.
So now the county has water and sewer down through there, but you know, there's been discussions back and forth on the sewer, a couple other things. We actually just met with the county last week, so.
I'll be happy to get a hold of Mr. McKay here and ask him what he feels if the city can do to help them and report back to you all, and we'll go from there. Is that okay?
Yeah, and maybe ask him if he's considered annexing, would that be?
Well, I think Jeremy's right in the sense that it's premature, but I'll talk to him about it.
Yeah, I mean, it might not be anything.
Yeah,
So let's kind of put that thought out there.
yeah.
And then to Mike's point, if
The
we.
question there is, I don't know, do we abut that at all?
Yes.
We do? Back behind Freeman's?
Yes.
Okay.
For the
Where the road,
yes.
okay.
What's that, Stein's property? That was all.
Can't
annexed into the
annex
city.
property that's not directly abutted city of St. Clairsville.
But I thought.
So if we abut,
Yes.
that's
We do,
fine.
with Stein's property back there.
So the one
for the
question
comments.
I'd have, Mark, is to Mike's point, that this is dated on the 30th. If he wants 30 days, our next meeting will be outside it, so is it?
Yeah,
is it
well,
a big
that's-
deal if it's?
Yeah, well, and then what we could do, even though we're gonna give that other notice tonight for a week from today, we could amend that. You know, obviously, when we announce a special meeting, you have to state the reason or reasons you're having, and you cannot talk about anything else. I mean, I could call him as soon as tomorrow. If he would want a resolution, we could amend our notice to include that and adopt it on the 28th.
I
Yeah,
think we
if-
may be a little premature on doing that right now to take official action. I think we maybe need to.
Let me get-
the law director first.
Let me get a hold of him and see what he says, and then I can talk to Elizabeth, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I think my question to him is this 30 days from the 3rd, a hard date, or knowing that we have a meeting on the 7th?
Yeah.
I think it is just from the fact of how they had to submit. He had actually asked the rec department to submit a letter, and we couldn't get it verified through the law director in time. So we didn't submit anything. We let them know that, look, we just didn't have time to go through this. They had sent it in like on a Thursday and wanted it by Monday, and it just didn't materialize. So I think they're pretty much set, they've got set dead hard lines of where they have to submit for all this stuff to be able to get it in.
I mean, that shouldn't stop each councilman or councilwoman if they want to, instead of a resolution individually, how do they want that, like a phone call, or they want something in writing?
Yeah, it would be
Response?
in writing. Let me call Mr. McKay, and then let me report back to you. I'll try to get him tomorrow. And then we'll see. It may be a moot point if he doesn't need anything at this point, so.
Okay. Thanks for sharing, Mark.
Sure.
Okay. Move on to the reports. Mayor,
You're looking at, I'm sorry, just being smart. Today's Tuesday, 2/2/2, 2022. So I hope we're all faring well as we're saying goodbye to winter, I hope. And our last meeting obviously fell on the heels of that epic ice storm that paralyzed the whole state of Ohio for several days. The storm and our response to it were the subject of much of my mayor's report in the last council meeting, but I do want to clear something up. I think there was an impression made that we had no plan for a storm like that, and actually, no one could have planned for that. That was catastrophic. But St. Clairsville did have a plan for everything that we were required to have a plan for: electric, sewer, streets, and water. We did have plans for this. Donnie had the guys out grinding the streets. We had guys ready to do the ice. We had all the street department. So I feel like we kind of had a miscommunication that we had no plan. The actual plan for warming and shelters is up to the Emergency Management Association. Jeremy and I spent a lot of time talking about this. We had a meeting 2 weeks ago, or a week and a half ago, with all the county commissioners, and we went through all this pretty extensively. And we left a letter, copies of the letter with Mr. Marchwinski, and we certainly have not dropped it. However, the chain of command is it has to come from the Emergency Management Association. So I don't want anyone to think that we did not have anything planned. I think our town performed absolutely magnificently in the face of that storm, but we are in the process of trying to get designated a warming or a shelter, depending on what we can do with the way of generators, because, and it certainly occurred to me, and I'll tell you what, I was praying both those nights, if the electric had gone out in the rec center, we would have been in big trouble. And just by the grace of God, we had electric. So we don't want to be in a situation where we're, hoping for the best, but, the worst could happen. So the EMA, I talked to Dave Ivan on Saturday, in fact. They're going to reach out to Thoburn Church because they had volunteered to be a warming shelter and possibly making our rec center a designated official shelter, as Jeremy had said. But we all need to remember the first responsibility for our safety is with ourselves. And again, I know I was caught flat-footed, but I've talked to a lot of people who are rethinking the purchase of generators. If you think the return on investment is there for you, that you absolutely have to have it, I would urge you to do that. I know Lowe's and Rural King have them. Like I said, I'm looking at that too. I don't know if our apartment complexes have them, but I would urge them, think about putting some generators in for the elderly populations. We've had a lot of people calling the city building, can you get generators in some of the complexes? No, we can't. That's private property. That is up to them to do, but I would urge them to think about that. It's not the responsibility of the municipality to provide those. If you're using oxygen, make sure you have a backup tank or battery, because we had several patients who were on oxygen we took to the rec center, and that was, again, another Hail Mary where we were praying nothing would happen. And the same with medicines. Have 3 or 4 days of your medicine ready. I, again, talked to Dave Ivan, and he said, we try to let people know you have to plan for at least 72 hours of emergency situation. That means having some granola bars or bottles of water where you can get them, medicines, anything you might need to grab to go. So I'm just reminding everyone, part of that responsibility falls on us. We were fortunate we had potable water, or is it potable, whatever. But the county did not, because all the pumps failed. So again, keep bottled water and granola bars where you can get them. Flashlights. I fortunately keep a flashlight on my refrigerator. I could find it. My cell phone was not charged. I never got it over 20% because I didn't think about it. So keep your cell phones charged, gas tanks full when we know bad weather's coming. But as the EMA plans are formulated, we have been told that we will be in the loop, myself, Mr. Greenwood, and we will disseminate that out to you as soon as we get it, because I don't ever want to see us in a situation where we have to worry about residents losing their life because of the cold. But everyone did truly step up with the ice storm, and we will follow the appropriate chain of command, and just pray not to have another weekend like that. I went to an Omega meeting in Denison, Ohio this past week. The speaker, Mr. Craig Butler, he is now with the Muskingum Watershed. He was previously with the EPA, so we knew him, and he has turned into quite a friend for the city. He's provided much detailed information on the important work the watershed is doing to prevent flooding and the various recreational projects which they are involved in some of our area lakes, including Seneca, Piedmont, and Tappan. Lots of good things are gonna happen this summer. They are having an opening at Tappan Marina, I think it's April 6th, did I tell you? If anybody wants to go over and see the new marina, which I think they put $4 million in, but they are very aggressively putting recreational things into the lakes because they feel like that's an important optic and it's important to do. And so I, of course, said, well, you know, if we get our reservoir decommissioned, I'd like to see us get some help over there. He said, I will talk to you about that. So can't promise anything, but we're trying. We met with several local business owners concerning some possible construction coming, details to follow. Attended a couple functions at the rec center, such as a pottery class, and it is a huge hit. A lot of senior citizens down there, and I think it's gonna be the beginning of other artistic classes here in St. Clair, so I'm very happy to see that. I met with Jeremy and Eric Gay concerning possible grant opportunities for the center. I went down to the adult volleyball and about had my head knocked off with the volleyball. 50 years ago was a pretty good volleyball player, but boy, I'm not in their league anymore, so, but that was fun to watch, and I'm glad to see it being used like that some of the adults are getting out and getting exercise. I was thrilled to be part of the ceremony that turned the deed of the firehouse over to the Cumberland Trail Fire Department. It's been a long time coming, and it'll now be possible for them to reach out and apply for grants that were previously out of reach because they didn't own the building. This will be a giant step for the Cumberland Trail Fire Department and ultimately for our city. I also attended an East Ohio Hospital Board meeting. Their population ER visits is up quite a bit, and their census is up, so they're doing very well. They're still looking to hire more nurses. I think that's about it, Jim.
Okay,
Thank you.
does anyone have any questions, comments for the mayor?
Yes, Mayor, you were saying that some people were saying we weren't prepared. Was that citizens or was it?
No, they thought maybe, and again, you know, we talked about it 2 weeks ago, and we said, oh, we weren't prepared for it. But again, as far as what the city is to be prepared for, we were very prepared. But again, when you've got phone calls coming in, you know, we've got people freezing. I was transporting people, the fire department, the police department were. You just feel like you're not 100% prepared for that. But again, we did, I thought, a magnificent job, but we're gonna make sure we have an in-town warming center or shelter. There is not one in St. Clairsville right now. I know at the bottom of the EMA paperwork, it says make sure you bring food or water with you, which no one did, because again, the lights went out when they went out and you didn't, but we're gonna have better plans in place. And again, we're gonna be working with the EMA and the county to make sure we're more prepared.
So I'm
Thank
glad,
you.
because that was one of my thoughts. Maybe we should meet with the EMA in a meeting, but it sounds like you already did that.
Immediately, that Monday, trust me.
Good. Yeah, because I know there's interested, I had a couple phone calls, interested citizens that would like to come to one of our meetings when we're discussing the warming center, just like the gentleman and his wife were talking about, and there's other people that want to get involved on it, so I
Excellent. And
definitely want to keep moving with it.
I would ask that they would probably talk to the commissioner's office, because again, I think with my heart, and I don't always do chain of command, but the true chain of command is for the county commissioners, EMA, so anything that's gonna get done needs to be funneled through them, correct? So there,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
But thank you, Dawn. Yes, Beth?
And we also talked about like forming a committee based on the recommendations. Did we last week, 2 weeks ago, did we not talk about we'd all be interested in?
Well, again, in talking with the commissioners that Tuesday, it was after we had met that we had the meeting with the commissioners. They would like to see it kind of come through them. So rather than us go, you know, having our own committee, but to try to work with them because that is the appropriate chain of command with Dave Ivan. So I would say, if you want to reach out to commissioners and see if they've got anything on the, or if they tell me, yes, we want citizens on it, I will reach out. But for us to do that, I feel like we've got to see what they're going to come up with first. I don't want to be doing something that we are not really supposed to be in charge of.
I'm just a little confused, so we cannot have a warming center without going through the commissioners?
Through
Through
EMA.
EMA.
We can't have a warming center without going through that?
Technically, no, because there's certain requirements for a warming center.
They have to have cots, they have to have blankets, they have to have
That-
generators or whatever.
That's more for a shelter,
Okay,
but,
excuse me,
yeah, I mean, a warming center is just a room, but it needs to make sure the contact information is there so that they can get a hold of somebody if they're opening it up or requesting that it be opened, just some, like, procedures that need to be followed.
And if we followed those, we could
Yes.
theoretically.
Yes, well, I mean, we're looking still at doing that. I think if, you know, the more we have here, the better off we'll be. But we're actually even looking at taking it a step further of possibly being a shelter too. But the different requirements for that, you know, we're already somewhat there. We have a kitchen. A shelter requires showers though. Our showers don't work there, and that was part of the renovation that we were gonna look at. But we were also discussing funding sources for it, because if there are funding sources where we can do the renovation of the restrooms and the showers, we'll obviously look at trying to get those and then see what happens with it.
Possibly grants because it's a warming
Yes.
center?
Yep,
Yes.
that's what we're looking at.
That's what we're trying to get out and see and go from there.
And,
Okay.
and like, if you have a shelter, and I didn't know this, but you have to have someone there, if older people need meds administered, you have to have someone qualified to administer medications, and, you know, you're not supposed to be doing that if you're not
Well, the
authorized.
big difference between a warming center and a shelter is if it's a shelter and designated as a shelter, the Red Cross comes in and mans it. So they take care of all the food, they take care of the manning and just the logistics of it. So we wouldn't be on the hook like we kind of were with our staff being there manning it.
Yeah, but I think, and I'm glad to hear that, but I think the citizens look to the government for a lot of things, but especially something like this, they're gonna look at the city. They're not gonna care if it's EMA or commissioner or whoever, they're gonna think it's the city, which they did. So, I'm glad we're gonna be proceeding with that.
It would kind of be like the St. Clairsville Warming Center / shelter, but we operated under their requirements.
Yes.
Yes, this way we're totally covered.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the service director's report, Mr. Greenwood.
Right. Good evening, council. One of the first things I want to do, I had actually heard a comment from a citizen about our crews when they were out during the storms. It was mentioned that they are getting paid and they're getting paid overtime, so they shouldn't have anything, but I just wanted to let it be known that some of our guys, actually most of the electric guys, were actually here, and their own families and houses themselves didn't have power or heat, so they were here trying to get the power back on for the city, and their own families were either in a hotel room or in the dark, basically. So just wanted to make sure that gets on record. Different meetings, the last couple weeks we had 9 different meetings, the mayor mentioned on some of them. Completed projects, we did the water pump startup at the existing county water connection. We're also looking at the valves just to make sure that they're gonna work once we get switched over. Upcoming projects, the budget is in there. Got something that I'll have for the next council meeting. We've been approached about oil and gas leases. There's 7 parcels in total for roughly about 62 acres. Going to have a discussion with them because there's looking at the parcels themselves. There's some parcels that are right next to each other that we own also that they're not asking for. So, and the process to do this, I've talked with the law director. Obviously, we'd either have to have 3 readings or an emergency, 30 days waiting after to be in effect, and then we have to advertise it for 5 weeks straight to be able to go out and see what's leasing. The terms aren't too bad, about 4K and about 20%. That'd be about $251,000. But like I said, I want to discuss with them some of these other parcels that are right next to these parcels that they're asking about. Server upgrades, once we get the budget done, some different trainings going through the East End water connection. The concrete vault was set. Tomorrow they're actually going to do the hookup with the line to our system, so that's moving forward. The National Road Bikeway Tunnel Project, had a meeting with the engineers last week. that $1.6 million project has jumped to a $3.8 million project because of inflation and other issues. We're working with the engineer to make determinations of what's there, and then we're going after additional money with that. That's some TID money that comes with that. So we'll see where that goes and go from there. The permanent water line leak under the interstate. As mentioned before, collaborating with the engineer and the EPA, we have the legislation for that to go after the loan for that project to get that moving. That is still very much on the EPA's radar. I had a meeting, team meeting with them today, and that was the second thing that they mentioned after some of the other stuff we talked about. So, rec center, working on some of the projects still with some of the stuff in there. The floor, that's actually in the budget. That's in there too, to actually renovate the floor. I've got sketches of and pictures of what that would look like, if anyone is interested in that. Also working on the train station, potential grant funding for the renovation of it. Still looking at updating our HR and administrative policies and procedures. We met with a HR firm, a local firm, to try and distinguish and see if they're gonna be a fit for us and determine if we're gonna go with them or not. Departments, the electric department, still doing, equipment maintenance, restocking, still doing storm damage. We're still advertising. We still have a one open position in that department. I do believe that goes until March 3rd. And then we'll start the interview process with that. Water, wastewater, the winter maintenance. We're still at 7 water line breaks. East End connection, as I mentioned, we're going to be connecting that tomorrow. The I-70 water line, we've already discussed that. The EFAL lift station, we're having some issues. We just had to replace a couple pumps and redo a couple motors on that. That was a nice $28,000 bill. Also, under that, scheduled for next month is the from the 2018 legislation, the water and sewer rates will go up for the March bill. That's the last scheduled rate increase under that legislation. Street department, we had a street repair that we're working on Elm Street. A little bit of a sinkhole developed out there, patching potholes and storm cleanup. We're going to have probably two city cleanups, but we're going to have the first one with storm damage the week of March 14th through the 18th. We'll go by wards, Ward 1 on Monday, Ward 2, and et cetera, all the way through. And then Friday will be a all-encompassing, whatever's leftover day. The rec center already hit on that. We had our rec meeting, also going after some grants. Police department, our new police officer started. He's actually sitting in the back of the room there. Also have one of our new used cruisers is staged outside. If you guys want to look at it, it's kind of a change from what we've had before. We were all white before with it. Now we're black with white doors. I think it looks kind of sharp. Also have both our radar signs out. One's on Newell Avenue and the other one's on Woodrow. Those were two requested locations. Good of the city, no one is currently out sick with COVID or anything that I know of, so that's always a welcome. Legislation items tonight, we've got legislation item 2022-03, which was the final budget, but we need to actually withdraw that because of a change that's in there. There's a change that's with it, so we'll actually have a new number for the final budget, and that's in the packet for tonight. So we'll need a motion to withdraw that. We've got 2205, which is the I-70 water line agreement. The 2206, the agreement for the emergency work for the water line. 2207, the resolution to change the council meeting time. 2208, the insurance faithful performance application, and 2209, the final budget. And as I mentioned, that was changed from 2022-03 because of the change in information. So we'll have to withdraw 2022-03 and then, read 2022-09. That's everything. You're welcome.
Anyone have any comments or questions for the service director?
The county water, will that actually take place this year, the switch over?
We're scheduled, it was, the orders and findings were March 11th, or no, I'm sorry, May 11th was the date of the orders and findings. We had 24 months to fulfill that. I actually had a meeting with them today to discuss the meeting I had last week with the county about them not quite being ready for that. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna ask for probably at least a 1 month extension on that, if not, maybe a 90-day extension. We'll have to see, I'm gonna have to coordinate with the county and see. The problem is their existing lift station that they were supposed to have renovated by now, or replaced by now, hasn't been finished yet. They were hoping to be pumping water. They're going through the same things that we are with the East End connection. The material supplies aren't there, they're just not, and it's nobody's fault, it's just happening. So the EPA is well aware of it. We're gonna prepare a letter that states that, you know, we'd like an extension on this and state the reasons and to get some backup from the county.
I'm not jumping out of order on it, but like, if that happens this year and the employees, how's that? Like, 'cause I know we was talking
Our
about.
water guys,
Yes,
they're being transferred.
yeah.
Yeah.
I know we was talking about last meeting.
Yep.
Some new hires.
Well, we've got a new hire for the police department, and we're short one in the electric department,
Oh, okay.
so we'll have the in there. The water guys, we're discussing opening up a position in the street department, but most of the water guys will be transferred into the sewer. It'll probably become a combined sewer and water. One of the main things that I want with those guys is when we're doing the distribution system, I want them out in the field when the contractor's out there, observing, actually documenting everything that's out there and seeing what other problems we have, because there's additional grant funding out there available for lead service lines for residents. We don't think we have any, but we pretty sure that we have some galvanized ones, and the EPA is treating galvanized lines the same as lead lines. So, but in order to do that and get that money, we have to document which specific houses, how many, and what the repairs would be. So we'll get that and then come back and potentially look at that project also.
Utilize them for their.
Yes.
knowledge?
Yes.
Great.
Okay, thank you, Donnie. Any other questions for the service director?
The March 14th through 18th collection, you said that is a storm cleanup?
Storm cleanup,
What is that
what we did
involved?
last year was for Earth Day, we had a debris cleanup and just yard waste and
Okay.
things where we had the chipper come around and we had the guys pick up, you know, branches and leaves and whatever, but with the storm that would just happened, obviously there's branches down everywhere. We wanted to try and set it up for as soon as possible, and that was really about the only good date that we have. We are probably gonna be, I don't wanna say losing our street superintendent, but he's gonna be out of commission in the next couple of weeks. He's got a family issue that's coming up.
Good luck to him. Thank you.
Well,
Any other comments, questions? Okay, thank you, Jeremy.
Actually,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
just the HR firm, does that mean we're not contracting with Clemens and Nelson?
we're still under contract with them until July, but we're just looking at options.
So if we go with this local one, we would not go with that?
Yes.
Okay, police department, Matt's not here, you got?
Matt's not here. He just basically wanted to go over the same thing. His numbers, he usually does at the beginning of the month, but wanted to go over the radar sign and obviously the new officer, and then have everyone look at the cruiser.
Okay. Move on to, finance director.
Good evening. We did have a finance committee meeting tonight, and Mike will do an update on that. The pages that you received tonight are changes that were made within the budget, just a few changes. so those will replace the other ones in your first packet. And that's all I have.
Does anybody have any specific questions for the finance director? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to planning and zoning, Mr. Murphy.
Good evening, council. I mentioned at the last council meeting that Horizon Telecom will be proposing new fiber overlash on the east end of the city. At the March 7th council meeting, our next meeting, Bryce Basista of Horizon Telecom will be present. He will be requesting council approval regarding the overlash of new fiber on the east end. Horizon does currently have fiber within the municipal limits, and they have a trunk line that goes through town. This overlash will touch 8 municipal poles before attaching to poles of other entities that are heading toward the plaza area. Prior to the next meeting, I will email council a brief synopsis of the project and attach the proposed plans. Donnie and I have met with Mr. Basista and other representatives from Horizon. Don is satisfied with the route and what they propose there. Code does not require an ordinance, but it does require council approval. In the past, there has been a vote of council regarding other fiber proposals based on my recommendation and what Donnie is recommending. With that said, they also submitted another proposal today to touch on 3 city poles to access Dr. Chaudhry's property. So Donnie and I will look at that also, and if it's something that is simple and they submit everything, I may send that information to council also for your review for that 7th meeting. If not, we'll wait till a subsequent meeting. Currently, I'm working on the annual stormwater report for the EPA. This report has to deal with the city's updating the EPA on any projects in town that required plans being submitted, such as the AEP project in Bellstorp. It also touches on, if we use herbicides and continual cleaning of catch basins, just the typical things that we do. Another item, AEP, they have submitted their stormwater management plan for the transmission line path, and I think I mentioned that at the last council meeting. I have distributed this plan to our Stormwater Quality Board members, and I met with Don Vincenzo last week and kind of reviewed that proposal. There has not been a meeting set up yet for that, but I'll keep the council aware of that. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Murphy? Okay, move on.
We can do it under police.
Okay, we'll go on to the council committee reports. First is finance, Mr. Smith.
Yes, and that said, we met tonight. Trying to see when the next finance committee meeting will be. I guess March 21st. Well, the first meeting's the 7th, right?
Yes.
Okay, it's a late one. Anyway, we met. We're gonna have a special meeting. And Robert, if you can put that in the paper, February 28th, Monday at 6 o'clock, to discuss, just to go over your appropriations. Because there's a lot of questions from people, and instead of everybody going one-on-one with Annette, you can ask them then. And if you don't have to attend, but if you're gonna vote on the appropriations, either go see her in private or attend this meeting. Also, I forgot to ask in the meeting, where do we stand on the funds from the state, the $5 million? I forgot to ask that.
We've submitted the paperwork on it, we're just waiting on confirmation. Usually what most projects like that is, we have to submit the formal paperwork and then come back after we have cost and submit the cost, and they reimburse us.
Okay. I'm sure that'll be more than $5 million, so we'll get the full
Yes.
$5 million. Okay.
Yes. And with that project, we're actually doing a bunch of add alternates to the project to allow us to get the maximum amount. And we still actually have a $250,000 grant with that project too.
Okay. Also, we didn't get any report tonight, so we'll catch up. Once we get a report for January, we'll catch up the next meeting on that one. We also discussed if council wants to, create an asset/fleet committee, and we can define it any way we want, but we have a lot of assets that are still on the books that are so old with no VIN numbers. It'd be nice to get a report once in a while that, let me not every month, but maybe once a quarter, every half year. It just shows the assets that we disposed of, whether auction or obsolescence, and any new purchases. So if council wants to think about that, the charter says we can create any committees we want to. And we can do that if you want to, and whoever wants to be on it, but just something to think about. And that's all I have.
Okay, Mike, maybe I missed it. When you gave Robert, did you give him the time for the meeting on the?
Yeah, 6
Monday?
o'clock.
Yeah. I just missed that. I just want to make sure he had the time.
Sure, yeah, 6 o'clock, Monday.
And that's a special meeting specifically to talk about the budget
Appropriations.
appropriations.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Does anybody have any specific questions for the chairman?
So I will just let you know that I met with Annette today because I had questions about the appropriation and I found it really helpful, answered my questions, so just wanted to say that.
Okay, thanks.
Jeremy was also,
I wasn't helpful.
she was much more helpful.
Yes.
Should point out that he was there.
Okay, thank you, Mike. We'll move on to, okay, utilities, Mr. Miller.
No report this evening. Our next meeting is,
7th.
yes, March 7th at 6:45.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Butler on utilities? Okay, we'll move on to the police, Ms. Oakridge.
We're gonna have a meeting tonight, we're not having a meeting tonight, there's no reason to have a meeting tonight, so we are going to, our next regular scheduled police meeting then would be March 21st, after this meeting.
Okay,
But-
thank you.
Since it's still police committee, I just wanna welcome our new officer also.
Yes.
Thank you for accepting
Mr.
the
Gass,
position.
would you like to
formally introduce
stand
you,
up
but I don't
and
think everybody-
introduce
Yeah, do you
yourself?
want- I'm gonna ask you to introduce yourself.
Yes.
Okay, I will. I'm Andrew Gazik. I graduated St. Clairsville High School in 2019. My dad was officer here for 27 years. When I graduated, I joined the volunteer fire department, volunteered. Then I went to the police academy, got hired on at Barnesville full-time, worked there for a year and a half, and then just transferred over here and got hired here. And I'm proud to be a part of the city.
So,
Thanks.
as someone who's fortunate as being on the police committee, to sit in on the interviews, and one of the things that impressed us with this fine young man is his enthusiasm for the community and for wanting this position within the city, so welcome you and appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
And then the other thing I'll just point out, as we pointed out 13 times, that maybe everybody will look at this car this time, because it really does look different, and it really is kind of a cool look, and so, and not to do it because it's cool, but it just, you know.
It was
absolutely-
necessity.
Well, the car, it made a lot of sense to get the cars,
Yes.
but in the black, and it made no sense to like paint over it, but there really is a striking look to this car, functional, and, so I do hope that people, you guys won't take off right away, but as people leave the council meeting, they can take another look at it, so, thanks.
I think that's a real smart deal that you got with it, the used. Can't beat that for the savings.
Yep, it was one of those things where we had a limited amount of time to make the decision, and it was just, yes,
Yeah, very good, thank you.
so, well,
Okay, officially, welcome aboard, glad to have you.
Thank you.
Okay, no other questions, we'll move on to, streets north side, Mr. Vincenzo.
Yeah, we had some, of course, some issues with all the rain. I had one phone call and I went out with the people and looked, on, Oak Street. the upper culvert was plugged with gravel and debris, leaves, which flooded, Willow. And that water crossed Willow and then down Oak. And the catch basin at the bottom of Oak just couldn't handle it. It washed out all around it and it flooded a neighbor's house and garage, mainly his garage. I did get a hold of Darren, our street superintendent. He had a crew out there. They cleaned it up. And I think our next big rain will handle, today proved that it handled it. But we do need some repairs down on the bottom of Oak and Wildwood that will help divert that water into that catch basin. We had another one, and I was able to get a hold of one of the police officers on Bellevue, down at the intersection Bellevue and North Sugar. It was plugged, it was flooded. I don't think there was any damage to anybody's property on that one, but the city did go out and they took care of that right away. And other than that, on the north side, I haven't had no other major water issues or reports.
Okay, thank you, Don. That intersection in Bellevue and North Sugar is a constant occurrence every time we get a large rain. It just automatically turns into a lake.
Yes.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Vincenzo? We'll move on to the south side. Mr. Trash.
Yes, just wanted to say how nice it is to see everybody's smiling faces today and be able to understand somebody. But there's a sinkhole on Elm Street that was caused by this rain on Thursday, I would imagine, and a lot of potholes came up from all that ice. That's all I got.
Okay. Any questions for Casey?
You know, while we're on streets, paving.
We're on the rollover from last year. As soon as the plant opens, hopefully, knock on wood, I've been told that we're number one on the list, but I've been told that many times before. The package for this year, I'm still waiting on the water distribution project. I will need to see which streets we're gonna be tearing up for that project, so that I'm not paving a street and then tearing it up, putting a water line in, and then paving it again.
Now, here's the
That's a
deal with
waste.
that. Thank you. The issue we have with that issue, that's not gonna be resolved anytime soon. I was able to speak to Mr. Vaughn, and correct me if I misunderstood him at any point. He can give us an idea of what but he's talking about a 4-year project.
For the distribution, now not the design. The design will have basically done hopefully by the end of spring.
Okay.
Which that'll give us locations.
Okay, he said that he would be happy to advise council or one of us, one of two ways. His rough idea of what might be torn up, or we give him proposed streets, and then, for example, if we pick 6 streets, whatever, we could then submit them to him, maybe through you, and he could kind of give us an idea. Otherwise, I got a feeling we're gonna be end of paving year again, potentially, just based upon the way, it's a huge project. And between what Jeremy told me and what Jeff told me this morning when I spoke with him, it puts us in a tough position to pave without having a real good idea of what streets might be torn up. So I don't know from the people that are on the street committee, however you want to proceed, if you're compiling streets, like I'm compiling streets, which I think need addressed, however we want to do that. But I just wanted to let you know, I spoke to him just to try to keep the whole paving thing going, but I don't know. I mean, obviously, I said last time, in the perfect world, we should be putting it out to bid now.
Should've been
We're
out
number
last month.
one. We're number one for 2022 because that project was
Bid out last year.
And there's a huge advantage to getting that done in February, because when the plant's ready to open, then you usually get your best prices from the contractors, and you get your paving done ASAP. 2022 is gonna be a little bit challenging. So for people on the street committee, if you wanna we need to compile our streets and then figure out how to address it with Jeremy and Mr. Vaughn and whatever, we'll go from there.
So is he saying that the list that we have is gonna change?
No, the list from last year is still the same. That's the one that got rolled over. That'll start as soon as the plants are opened up, and hopefully this spring we'll get. I do believe what he's talking about is this year's package, which I'm waiting on the distribution system to, okay. Now, I say that, but we kind of know it's a lot of the east end. And now what that does is that allows us we could finalize streets on the west end, but depending on how much we're able to push with the budget and the grant that we got is how far we're gonna go. So it's kind of one of those, we hope we're gonna go this far, with inflation and everything else going on, we might only get to go this far with it. So, but, you know, we'll get it figured out.
About a month ago, he sent us the streets,
Who's he?
Jeremy.
Yes.
Okay.
Sent us the streets that were addressed for 2021, but did not get picked. So I would ask my
Yes.
fellow council, take a look at those streets, and then whatever other streets that you may have on your list, we need to bring that together. And quite frankly, the sooner we do that, I think the easiest way to do it would be to give those streets to Mr. Vaughn and have him give us an idea of whether or not Street A is feasible.
Well,
Street
it's
B-
gonna depend on whether or not we have the water lines. Like, there's some areas we're gonna be able to keep the water lines out of the street.
Right.
Which, you know,
Right.
replacing sidewalks a lot cheaper than doing streets, so that's what we're working towards. But I would say just submit them to me, and I will compile everything,
Right.
and then I can send that out to all of you guys
Right.
too. Cause I've got a list from Darren and Donnie and all the superintendents already.
Okay.
And things where we've had water line breaks and issues with, you know, other stuff, obviously, that issue we're having on Elm right now.
I understand.
Yeah, stuff like that, so.
Do you have a good idea from like Darren and Donnie and superintendent, which streets need paved?
I think so,
Okay.
but I'm always open
Yeah.
because there's streets that we don't always go on too, so that's why the council, anything that a council member says is taken and added to the list, or if it's already on there, we say, yep, we know about that one,
Oh, okay.
and we go through it.
Is it possible to give a list of the streets that you have?
Yes,
And,
yeah, I can send that
we can
out.
compare and, do some there, get some north, and, yeah, that would be great, thank you.
Do we think that the price, like, so if I remember, ballpark was about 180,000 last year, and that's what we're first on the list? And this plan,
Yeah, we
think-
changed it up to 2, just because to have a little bit of fluff in there.
Right.
Now, one of the issues that we were looking at doing is Edinburgh. There's a section there that is just, the street itself is just absolutely horrible. We actually need to come in and take the base up and go and start all over again. And that's what I was getting to, or, you know, before about, you know, updating our standard details for sidewalks and streets with stuff, because there's been streets that have been paved and they look great for the first 3 months, and then they turn to crap after the development's been turned over to the city, and then we're on the hook and we're trying to patch and repair, and it just doesn't work out.
But are we thinking for this coming year, another 200,000?
Roughly, yes.
Okay, so I appreciate, like, we don't wanna do it and then rip it up because we put a water line in, but I concur that the sooner we get a list
Mm-hmm.
and get some type of assurance, it's like, we know if we're starting at one end, there are other ones, and I like the idea of what didn't make the list in 2021, plus whatever the superintendents have risen
Mm-hmm.
to the top, as well as the street committee. I mean, I feel like I don't wanna miss another year, right?
Mhm.
And so I would concur that the sooner we
Yes.
get that, you know, so we can get it out the door and get that, like, when do these factories start up?
Depends.
Tomorrow.
Approximately.
It could be tomorrow, it depends on the weather, it could be tomorrow, and that's what I was saying before about last year. If the weather's good, they'll keep the plant operational until December. I've seen it go all the way into December and almost January. But as soon as you start getting the cold weather, they gotta pay a lot of money to heat up that asphalt to keep it at a certain temperature to be able to keep it pliable to put down. So once it starts to get too cold, they're just like, we're done, and they just shut down.
Is there a chance with the paving company, if we work soon on this, that while they have their equipment in here?
That was the intent to try and do, but then, like I said, once we got the $5 million grant and the water distribution expanded, it was like, oh, okay, well, this is an interesting problem to have, so we're still working through it.
Plus, you know, that whole bid process has to go out again.
Oh, okay.
And it's gonna take a while so they would have
Yes.
to bid.
Yes, they would have to bid on it.
They would have to bid, so.
But with them already being mobilized in here, it would make sense
Right.
that they're,
It's just a
yes.
matter of timing.
Yes.
So when, I mean,
I can send you the list I have now, I'm just waiting on the engineer to get,
but
you know,
could
the
we-
water
when-
lines.
When could we feasibly, right, like realistically, like get a bid back, right, we would wanna,
I was hoping to have one already, but, you know, like I said, once we got that additional money and our phase 1 project expanded into phase 2, it just took on a whole nother life because it's almost half the city now. So
Can we
that's-
target
that's a
March
lot.
7th to start the process?
I would think that's a little still premature. I wanna get with Jeff and go through it and get the streets, because I'm really worried about that. There's a lot of area that we're covering with stuff. I agree it needs to be as soon as possible, but I just think we're jumping the gun on that one right now.
So how did you do this last year? How did the final determination go with streets?
The
I mean,
streets?
recommendations from.
Recommendations,
from our-
I sat down with the
Right.
superintendents and then we actually went out and looked and saw and got lists from council.
Okay.
All the people, I said, send me everything you got, what streets, just like you were talking about. We compiled the list and then we sat down. It was me, Darren, and Donnie, and I forget who else was in there. Was it Tom? Were you in there on that one? No, I don't think
Some
you
of the
were.
square footage, but.
Yeah, you did the takeoffs for us to go through it, and then we just determined which ones were the worst, and we tried to space it out into the wards, so it wasn't just Ward 1 getting all the paving,
Right.
it was all around the city and everything.
Right.
You pay a little bit more with that because they're mobilized here and then have
Right.
to break down and go over here, but it's fair to the entire city, it's not just concentrating on one section of the city.
would the 21st?
I'll have to talk to Jeff on and see how far he is. I know he said he had the phase 1 pretty well wrapped up, it was just the phase 2 locations.
So maybe by the 7th, you can let us know if.
I'll send you the list of streets I have now, I don't wanna set a date and not be able to fulfill it for you guys.
He told me that if we submitted streets to him, he could give us a pretty good indication and would recommend whether or not we pave that street. Now. Meaning
Okay.
if we gave him a list now, he could give us a pretty good indication.
Okay.
Now, if we wait another 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever, I'm sure it'll be that further ahead.
Yeah, like I said, he was working on it to try and get phase 2 figured out, so. But, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or any comments on South Side streets or streets in general, since we're backtracking a little bit? Okay, we'll move on to safety. JC, do you have anything on safety?
Yeah, we had our meeting on February 17th, at 9 o'clock in the morning. 13 employees showed up. It was about ergonomics and the art of motion, lifting and placing stuff in a safe way. Very informative.
Anybody have any questions or comments for?
Just a quick
JC?
comment, with all the overtime, with the street department, the electric department, with everything with this ice, and no injuries, I applaud all the employees.
Good point.
Okay, we'll move on to building and grounds. Mr. Jordan, do you
No
have a
report.
report? Mr. Thomas, Planning Commission, do you have a report?
No report.
Okay, we'll move on to the fire district.
The board approved the hiring of 2 part-time firefighters, also approved the bid received from Johnson's Fire Equipment for new structural turnout gear for all 45 employees in the amount of $134,977.50, in compliance with FEMA Assistance to Firefighters grant that the department had received. The board also approved the purchase of 20 new SCBA's from Municipal Emergency Services in the amount of $167,690. And this was also a purchase made in compliance with the FEMA Assistance to Firefighters grant that the department had received. The board accepted a grant from Ohio, the ODNR, in the amount of $17,319.59 for the purchase of wildland gear and wildland boats for all 45 employees. That also requires a 50% match. Other discussion items, the department concluded its ice rescue training that was held February 7th through the 15th. Special thanks to the Belmont County Commissioners for allowing them to use the pond at Fox Commerce Park. The department is also getting ready to finish its biennial paramedic training that recertifies all the employees with the state of Ohio EMS. There is a special meeting this coming Thursday, the 24th at 10 a.m. to interview potential architects, and that is at the fire station. The next regularly scheduled board meeting is March 16th at 9 a.m., also at the firehouse.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any comments or questions for Linda on the fire district? Okay, recreation. Mr. Thomas, do you have anything on the rec department?
Yes, we met last Thursday, February 17th, and Eric gave us a good report on the various programs that are going on, ones that are starting, and ones that are finished for the year. I won't go through them specifically, but the bottom line is the place is full 7 days a week, from early in the morning to middle of the evening, and there's a lot of good feedback regarding the same, and he's just going to continue to prod forward. We talked about the summer concert series, and he's got Jeremy. What did he say? He's got a number of sponsors. Again, it's starting Memorial Day weekend. Did he say he had 8,000 of the 14,000
Yes.
committed? He has $8,000 worth of sponsorships. Last year we spent 14,000, I think, on the
Band.
concert series, and he's looking to solidify that as they start on Memorial Day weekend. As Jeremy mentioned, we talked about the floor replacement, and in essence, this is what it's going to look like. The floor is gray now. It's going to be black at this point, which will while it'll get a little dirtier easy, it will hide smudge marks a little bit better. But it'll be City of St. Clairsville here on the end, and Parks and Recreation. So it looks pretty cool, and everyone's excited about that. Lastly, we of course talked about the warming center thing and everything we discussed earlier, so I won't go over that. The last thing I'll have, he did talk about some grants Jeremy mentioned of generally, just real quickly. He's going to apply for or has applied for an $8,000 grant, which is called a Cause Connector grant in English. He's applying for this grant to establish and get a Bluetooth wireless system in the gym within the facility there that can be used for all the different programs, and there is no match for that grant. So we'll keep you posted on further updates. He's going to apply for an ODNR paddling enhancement grant. He was to meet with Lash Paving yesterday to have final numbers for that grant. In essence, there's going to be a boat dock and an ADA accessible ramp and parking lot at the reservoir. With the idea, with the Parks and Recreation Department looking at down the road, especially when the water system is connected to the county, and to use the reservoir as a recreation facility. And there'll be some other things that down the road may be announced by ODNR in partnership with the city, and that is a 100% reimbursement grant. The big one, and Jeremy, he's talked to Jeremy, and I've talked to him also. The state of Ohio has what's called a capital bill, and that's through the legislature, and every 2 years, they set aside money that any government entity can apply for monies through the capital bill. Belmont County has done it almost every 2 years for as long as I've known. You know, for example, about 5 years ago in 2017, we wrote a capital bill grant funding for the Carnes Center. We got $250,000 this year, and last year I'm working with Commissioner Dutton, and we've applied for another $500,000 for the Carnes Center. We've done other projects for the capital bill. Eric's going to apply for $400,000 for the next round of capital bill funding, and that will be used for one of the old fairground exhibit buildings that's right across the parking lot and road on the grounds there. The intent there is to completely rehab that facility and be able to use it for functions other than sporting functions. One of the reasons we're maxed out, as you probably all know, is there are people asking for rental facilities there for parties, et cetera, and what have you, meeting space, et cetera. The goal in this capital bill funding request will be to secure funds to completely redo that building. And I'm talking about from electricity to whatever HVAC, plumbing, flooring, restrooms, et cetera, and create it into a space that can be used for events. It can be used for, they would put a stage up, it can be used by the school, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of people that are gonna help Eric get that done, and then we'll keep our fingers crossed, because it would be a great addition to the city for obvious reasons.
Is that a match?
No, capital bill is truly grant money handed to you by the state. It's very competitive, but I will tell you this, from my experience over 20-some years of writing these, it's a great project.
Now, let's say he would get that 400,000. I mean, I'm counting on it.
Yeah.
Does it all have to go towards that building, or can you use it?
Whatever's written
No.
into, whatever's written into it, like we wrote into the train station renovation too.
Can you do the basketball court at South Park?
No. We have money in the budget for that.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
50 grand set aside.
Mhm.
in the-
So are we working on that? We're gonna do that?
I can get the budget passed. Well.
Okay?
Yes, thank you.
That's it, Mr. President, thank you.
Okay, thank you,
It's the
Mark.
budget passed.
Does anybody have any questions or further comments for Mr. Thomas? Okay, Park District, Linda, do you have any?
Did you let them know about that incident with the unlocked gate?
Yeah, I talked to the electrical
Okay.
department and everybody about it.
Okay. But if there are any issues, just call Katie, and she'll go. Anyway, the park will be meeting again. This month's meeting was canceled. They will be meeting again March 14th, 4:30, Preferred Legacy Trust Company, 103 Plaza Drive, Suite 3. That is actually the old election board building.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Linda on Park? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to ordinances and resolutions. Our law director could not be in attendance this evening. We do have, we're gonna maybe put the cart before the horse here a little bit. We've got 1, 2, 3, we've got 4 pieces of legislation up for first reading. We have 2 up for second reading. I think before we get into the first readings, the resolution of 2022-03 has to be rescinded because the numbers on that bill, or on that budget were changed, so we cannot go with the same number. So at that time, the simplest thing would be to have someone request to have that withdrawn from the.
So just a,
Anybody?
Anybody can.
Bueller.
Make a request to have it drawn.
Talking about just a motion,
Just a motion is all it takes.
I'll second it.
Okay, this is to withdraw. That
Yes.
piece of legislation will be withdrawn, and it will be replaced with a different number, because the numbers were changed. Okay, we have a motion and a second. We need a vote to withdraw 2022-03 from the,
Take a vote.
we need a vote.
Butler,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Oak Ridge,
yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Thrash,
Yes.
and Zenza.
Yes.
All members are in favor. Motion carried.
Okay, ordinance 2022-03 has been withdrawn. Okay, now we'll go back to the first readings. We have ordinance 2022-05. Dick, you went for the first reading on that.
Resolution 2022-5, a resolution authorizing Mayor Catherine Thalman to apply for, accept, and enter into a cooperative agreement for construction of the Interstate 70 Interpass Water Main Project between the City of St. Clairsville and Ohio Water Development Authority and declaring an emergency.
Okay, that is the first reading. Does anyone wish to take any further action on that as emergency legislation? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to ordinance 2022-06.
Ordinance number 2022-6, an ordinance authorizing the City of St. Clairsville to enter into a contract for the temporary I-70 water line repair and permanent piping connection and declaring an emergency.
Okay, is there a need for this to be considered as emergency legislation?
It actually needed both because the interest rate is gonna go up for the loan on the first one, but since that first one wasn't passed emergency, this one doesn't need to be it either.
Well, so, did we know this interest rate was going up?
I don't know. I don't,
So that, you're talking about 5, which we just
Yes.
decided not to do anything, but nobody said
Yes.
anything about an interest rate was gonna go up.
that was the comment before about needing the attachment, last time, and then wanting to know the interest rate, which I thought maybe the interest rate was attached there, I didn't see it, but the current rate was 1.33%, and it's going up every month.
What's it
This
going up
is-
to?
Don't know.
And this is the one that last meeting, there was no attachment A.
Yes, the
And
attachment A
then
wasn't
there was
in.
back and forth of email that sometimes we don't put the attachment because we can't figure it out.
Yes,
Until there's, so.
yes, it's basically the attachment A that's attached to it as a placeholder until the actual loan amount is finalized with the interest rate.
So are you saying this needs to be in an emergency?
It should be, yes.
Okay, cause did I just miss a conversation here, right? Okay, so, we just did a first reading, we're hearing this will cost us money if we don't act. We asked for attachment A, here's attachment A, we hear the interest rate is 1.3. Can I make a motion now, or is it too late because I didn't have this information?
Yes,
I thought it was in there. No, it says the term rate will be generated by ODA after the loan is approved. Sorry, I thought that's what that last sheet was. But I know currently, per that email, it's 1.33%. And RCAP informed us that it's going up every month.
Did you just say the interest rate will be determined after we?
The term sheet will be generated by OWDA after the loan is approved by the board. at the board meeting, at their meeting. The
So-
interest rate
so
is
we can't-
currently 1.3%, 1.33%, and it's been going up every month.
So if we did something tonight, it's still February, we did an emergency, but we just had a first reading,
Yes.
and we didn't make action, and, is the law director here to tell us, can we make a motion? I'm willing to make an emotion on emergency.
I'm not an attorney, I don't think you could make.
No,
a
what you
second
have to
motion.
do, what you have to do is,
Special meeting or to next meeting.
well, you can repeal
The first one.
the legend, that's the only way to do it now. You have to repeal the one we just approved, and
Well, it
then,
was the first reading, so it wasn't even approved, it was just.
okay, well, yeah, that's a good point. So, our charter, I don't think says anything about amendments. So, chapter 7 of the code would apply, so we could possibly amend that. But I could look it up real quick. If that statute is in Title 7 of the code, it would be an amendment to the first reading. And at that point, it would be an emergency basis, but can we proceed? If we get a code section really we can rely upon, but I don't wanna sit here and wait while we look at it. But if it needs to be done tonight,
It should be, but I know council has had issues with the emergency stuff before, so I would like it to be, but what I like and other things are often sometimes back and forth.
If you just had a first reading, that's all you had, that's all you've done, there's been no decision made. At this point in time, someone, I would imagine, can make that motion to, kind of do away with the emergent, and have that emergency language that you typically read. Nothing's been done other than having it read, no one's voted on it yet.
Yeah, so I don't know, right? I would think, but I would have wanted to hear, we need this as emergency tonight before we did this first reading and moved on. So we didn't, so what's the solution now? If this needs to be done, none of us like emergencies, but we understand, we asked for attachment A, we got attachment A. So it's just helpful to write, like, we really could use this as an emergency tonight. So the question is, can we legally, and that's.
We need the attorney here.
I don't know if we get into some nightmares doing something we shouldn't. We should probably have legal
That's
advice before we.
Where
do
is
anything.
Elizabeth?
Since it's Tuesday night, she's at her other municipality.
Tuesday nights is a good night for her normally because of, our council meetings are on Monday, but there was
With our council.
a specific meeting
Sure.
that she had to attend for a specific reason. So we unfortunately do not have a law director this evening.
well, here's the statute, just so you know, at whatever council's pleasure. It's section 731.19 of the Ohio Revised Code. No ordinance, well, that's, okay, I don't need that first sentence. No ordinance or section thereof shall be revived or amended unless the new ordinance contains the entire ordinance or section revived or amended, and the ordinance so amended shall be repealed. Does that make sense?
I don't understand any of that.
Nothing would be
That
amended,
would-
nothing
yeah.
would be amended, it's all the
Because
same.
there was nothing voted upon.
Well, but you would have to amend, the, was that 5?
Yes.
You'd have to amend,
The reading from the
section
first
3,
reading, yes.
or you'd have to add the emergency language.
It's already got the emergency.
It's got emergency language in it. It's just nobody took action to, consider it emergency.
So the fact that we took no action, then why can't we take action now? We didn't do anything else?
You're deliberating. You're still
I-
deliberating.
Yeah, but
I
I mean,
would
it's not
say,
a lot
I
of-
would agree with that, but
Yeah, I mean, I don't wanna do something wrong either, right?
I think, I would suggest.
You have to have a separate reading. You can't have a second reading at the same night. It has to be So your only way to do it is to amend it, okay? And that's what we're doing, you would amend the section, well,
Again, I don't have the law director here to ask, but since there's going to be, we can designate the meeting, I don't know if we can designate the meeting Monday to discuss appropriations and also
Yes, you can.
have a second reading at that, but it would have to be publicized as that
Yes.
would be a second reading for that,
As a special meeting.
as a special meeting and discuss appropriations. As long as in advance, that's what the meeting's for. My understanding is you can do it. So it could be passed an emergency at Monday night's meeting, I believe.
yes, yes,
We'll talk to Elizabeth.
Yep.
no, it's.
So I think what we could do is at Monday's meeting, which Robert is gonna publicize and we're gonna
Special meeting
publicize
would
it.
be, the notice that's sent out would be to
Two
address,
purposes.
the 2022 appropriations and this legislation.
Right, so that would allow
And
us
it would
to
be,
actually
it
pass
would
it
be
next
5 and
Monday
6 then,
meeting.
right,
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes. Because they're paired together.
Now, we can pass the other one as emergency this evening.
If council wishes.
I mean, 6, they kind of run together, so 6
Yeah.
could be considered emergency tonight. And,
6 goes with 5, right?
Yes.
So,
and we could do Monday,
Wait till
or we
Monday.
could do 5 on Monday when we have the appropriations and to address that. But it has to be publicized as that's the 2 issues that the meeting's for, because you can't talk about anything else.
if we're waiting for 5, my vote is to, or my suggestion, vote is to wait, 6 goes with 5. If we're doing 5 on Monday, then I don't see maybe doing 6 without doing 5.
Well, we
That
have
don't make
to,
any
well, we
sense.
have to make sure, because it would have to be to read both of them for a second
Yeah.
reading at that meeting. It would have to be publicized that way. We could read it once tonight and pass it as emergency, or we could read it once tonight and then read them both Monday and pass them then.
But they go
would-
hand in hand.
Pardon?
They
Yes.
go hand in hand.
Right.
One is the loan, one is for emergency so that we didn't have to bid out the project because of the material shortage and the, availability of the contractor due to temporary line.
It's just the idea that if we're gonna do it that way, then all 3 of those points have to be publicized, as that's what the meeting's being held for. You can't discuss anything that's not, that special meeting was called for. So the special meeting would be to discuss appropriations and to consider emergency legislation on 2205 and 2206.
And we need 5 people, right, to pass those?
Yes.
But there has to be a minimum of 5 people considered an emergency.
So,
Otherwise,
let me
that
just
can't pass.
ask, on the 28th of February, next Monday,
Right.
are people available?
I am.
1,
Indeed.
2, 3,
We need at least 5 to pass it as
Linda,
emergency.
are you?
As far as I, so far,
At the
yes.
moment.
At the moment, yes.
Yeah, I wasn't, but I am now.
So we can make sure that that is put out to the
Sounds
public
fair.
that,
Can you do?
for that purpose.
We can do that first. We can do that first if you want.
And it won't take,
And then you can leave
to
because
pass
they're
those
already-
2 pieces won't take that long, so they could be done first and then discuss the appropriations.
You can bring pizza.
Okay, so our 6, are we doing the first reading?
So 6 would just be a first reading tonight. Pardon?
I read it right.
Right, tonight, 6 would be the first reading tonight.
Did you read it?
Been a long
I
time.
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah, I did.
How long ago was that?
20 minutes?
An hour ago.
So, I just want to say one other thing, sorry. When we have meetings on Monday and it's a holiday, then our council meetings are always on Tuesday. That's what the charter, is it not?
So it's charter right.
Okay.
Okay. We just have to make sure that those 3 items are publicized, as that's what the purpose of the meeting is. But Roberta will take care of that, we can discuss that with Robert to make sure it can be put out, and will be well past 48 hours notification for the public.
Okay, and I hate to belabor a point, but just because we're getting this, why is one of these a resolution and one an ordinance?
I could not tell you.
Okay, so the law director needs to tell us that also.
Okay, the next up for first reading is Resolution 2022-8. Would you read that, please?
Resolution number 2022-8, a resolution authorizing the city of St. Clairsville, Ohio, to purchase and use employee dishonesty and faithful performance of duty policy through PEP instead of individual surety bonds for officers, employees, and appointees who are otherwise required by law to acquire a bond before entering upon the discharge of duty.
Okay, the next item up for.
I don't see emergency language, so there is no need for this to be an emergency.
Oh, isn't there?
That's not it.
Okay. Yeah.
Any questions?
Section 1, second page, that this resolution is declared to be an emergency measure necessary for the immediate preservation of public health, safety, and welfare of the city of St. Clairsville.
Where is that?
Section 1, page 2 of the resolution.
Page 2 is hard to copy.
I'm sorry?
I said page 2 was hard to copy, I believe, on that particular one.
I believe it came out there. Page 2 did, we did get it to print.
Okay.
Okay, you got it.
Hey, Jim, I have a question. What is this? I don't even understand what this is.
It's basically the bonding for the people that are supposed to be bonded. There was a discussion, when we actually had it out, to bid for the insurance. According to the ORC, Annette, the finance director, is the only one that's really supposed to be bonded.
Right.
But the underwriter had, some questions as to whether I'm actually considered a city manager or not. And for $200, it was worth to get the $50,000 after conveying with the, or conferring with the law director. It was just easier to go ahead and have me bonded.
What about the mayor?
She was listed on there too. She's on there for $2,000.
So
It was
this is,
basically for mayor's court.
Because at some point, if the mayor signs checks, the charter says she has to be bonded, so.
Yes, but she doesn't sign checks, so.
Well, I mean, she could be an emergency.
I know, but it was basically the same thing. The underwriter said, yeah, the mayor should be. And we said, okay, fine, for the amount of money that the bonds cost us, it was worth.
So what did we do in the past? We just weren't bonded? Nobody was bonded?
I do believe the finance director was bonded and the mayor was bonded. And those were the only two individuals ever bonded.
Okay.
But like I said, it depends on what you say. I've got a whole, here's Ohio compliance supplement that was in here, and it talks about city requirements. A city manager, but if you go by ORC definitions, I'm not a city manager, but the underwriter.
Language.
Yeah, the underwriter had a question on it, so it was just easier to say, yes, fine, bond me, and just move on.
so why opt for this as opposed to the bonds?
Well, this is basically the PEP's version of the bond.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just a little confused on the emergency. It's usually in the beginning when we need it up in the top, and this is on page 1, which I almost missed. So, A, why isn't it in the beginning? And then B, is it an emergency? Is it something that we've already done?
It's, the insurance started the 13th of February.
Okay.
So we need to have this to fulfill and finalize all the coverage. So yes, it should be an emergency. Why it wasn't listed up there, I can't answer that.
It is in
I
the,
didn't
it
draft
is
it.
in the language.
I
It's
see
in the
that now in
language of it.
section 1 after asking that question.
Because that's when you said that, that's why I was like, well, no, wait a minute, that should be, because this is something that needs to be, so that we can have the coverage.
just need to add the language to the title.
Because it's in the actual.
Yeah, I
it's in
mean,
the
we
actual
can adopt, we
ordinance.
can, we can, pass it with the ordinance,
It's
just,
in the resolution itself.
Has been rewritten.
it's more of a
Type.
clerical type
Yes,
thing than it is,
okay,
you know.
You want to pass it on
all right.
Jeremy, you're saying this needs to be done?
It should be, yes, to make sure that we're covered with the coverage.
Hey, Jacob, would you get a chance, we need new slips of what we're supposed to say in emergency.
Oh, okay.
So nobody was, you all were not covered, that's what you're saying? You were not bonded?
I was never bonded. The service director was never bonded. The underwriter for the PEP had a question on whether or not I could be classified as a city manager. If you look at the definition of a city manager in the Ohio Revised Code, it's somebody appointed by council and reports directly to council. I report to you guys, but I'm approved by you, I'm appointed by the mayor. So it's semantics. But in order, instead of arguing back and forth with them for $200, it was easier to get me $5,000 or $50,000 of coverage, just like the finance director, and just to move on.
And you've never been bonded before, I mean, since you've been
No.
employed?
From my understanding, the service director's never been bonded.
So the emergency is,
That we need to get it actually finalized so that I'm covered, Annette is covered, and the mayor is covered.
and
under
right
the
now,
insurance.
none of you guys are covered.
I'd say probably not.
Is there a reason that you weren't? I mean,
Well, we were bonded before.
You
I
were
was.
bonded,
I was.
those two, they were bonded. The service director, from my knowledge, has never been bonded.
It was a recommendation from the insurance.
But
for
the
changing
underwriter
insurances.
had a question on it, so it was just easier to say, yep, go ahead and bond me.
So it's not
Why?
impacting our insurance at this moment?
No.
No,
We need to do it at some point,
Yes.
right? And you're
Well, I can't 100% say that I would be covered or Annette would be covered without this in there, under the insurance.
because we changed insurances, the language was a little bit different, so they're trying to,
so how did they not catch this before?
When we had out the bid specs, the only one, if you look in the ORC, is the treasurer financial is the only one that needs to be in there. The underwriter now has come back and said, technically, are you considered city manager? And I still adamantly said no, but talking with the law director, it was just easier to say, yep, go ahead and do it and move on.
I asked that question.
Any other?
Linda, the reason the service director has never been bonded, the main purpose behind the bond under the law is anyone dealing with finances, okay? And historically, in St. Clairsville, there's never been, at the request of any insurance company, there's never been a need to bond the director of public services because he or she doesn't deal
Doesn't deal with the money.
with that. To where his actions, in this case Jeremy, his actions don't necessarily need to be bonded, because it doesn't involve finance. And that's what the insurance company is worried
So
about.
it doesn't have anything to do like with reading contracts or anything like that?
No,
No.
Okay,
No, it's just fine.
And then, I do believe
It's just
one of the
financial.
last.
it's all about the money.
Yes.
just financial?
Yes.
And one of the last changes that was made to the charter was that the service director doesn't have anything to do with deposits or anything
Right.
else either, because it used to be that we could do, or the service director could do the bank deposits and things, and that's totally off.
Would this cover anything else besides money, like
I don't think so.
materials? Somebody takes a load of 2x4s home,
Yeah,
or, I mean, a lawnmower,
Theft.
yeah.
To be
Well,
honest, I
can't
don't,
think
I
of
think it's
Dishonesty,
just,
that would cover the.
yeah,
dishonesty.
that should
What
cover
are
that.
other
Yeah.
insurance covered?
Yes.
Okay.
That was the,
What's that? I got it. I'm gonna, do you wanna ask if anyone wants to do anything, or you want me to say something? Right.
city manager,
Yeah,
bonding.
I move that the rules requiring ordinances and resolutions be read for a second reading to suspend the plan emergency.
JC second. Okay, we'll take a vote to consider whether or not this will be emergency legislation.
Butler,
Yes.
Jordan,
No.
Oakbridge,
Yep.
Smith,
Yep.
Thomas,
Yes.
Thrash,
Yes.
Vincenzo,
Yes.
6 in favor, 1 opposed.
Okay, council has voted to consider this emergency legislation. We will now read it for the final time and take a roll call vote on passage of the legislation.
Resolution number 2022-8, a resolution authorizing the city of St. Clairsville, Ohio, to purchase and use employee dishonesty and faithful performance of duty policy through PEP instead of individual surety bonds for officers, employees, and appointees who are otherwise required by law to acquire a bond before entering upon the discharge of duties.
Okay, we need a motion to consider this. Second.
Second.
Mr. Thomas. We'll now take a vote to pass the legislation itself.
Butler,
Yes.
Jordan,
Abstain.
Oakbridge,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Thrash,
Yes.
Vincenzo,
Yes.
6 in favor, 1 abstention.
Okay, 2022-8 has been passed. The next item up for first reading is ordinance 2022-09.
Ordinance 2022-9, an ordinance to make permanent appropriations for the normal expenses and other expenditures of the city of St. Clairsville, state of Ohio, for the period January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2022, and declaring an emergency.
Okay, that is the first reading. This does have emergency language in it. Does anyone wish to consider this an emergency? Okay, hearing nothing, we will move on to the last piece of legislation, which is under second reading, Resolution 2022-07.
Resolution number 2022-7, a resolution moving the time of all regular council meetings from 7:30 PM to 7 PM.
Just remind me when, after the third reading, when does this,
30
when did these
days.
start?
30 days.
I need a date, so. Next,
Well, we
next
read it
council
tonight,
meeting is the third reading.
what, the first week in April? Is that the first reading in?
Yes, it'll be April 4th.
Thank
Be the
you.
first meeting in April is when it goes into effect.
Be April 4th.
We also need to look at officially changing
Committees.
the committee meetings, because they are now all set up at 6:45, and I don't think 15 minutes is gonna be enough. So they're gonna have to, just something to consider, they're gonna have to be backtracked at least to 6:30.
I think we need to check with the law director, but I think that needs to be reduced to writing, just like the.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's
We
gonna
need
have,
to, we need to outline every committee and when they meet,
right, but that's
just so
the
we
same.
have it memorialized.
I'm just trying to tell them that they need to understand
Right.
that these meetings are gonna, the committee meetings are gonna have to start early, because right now, 15
Right.
minutes is not enough time before a council meeting, once it
Yeah.
goes to 7 o'clock.
So in the month of March, the chairs of each respective meeting need to come up with a new meeting time or day, and we go from there. Because none of that stuff is made it into the charter. We don't even have, we just have the first and third Mondays. We don't have a time, we don't have anything like that in there.
Okay, at this time, there's nothing else officially on the agenda. Mr. Thomas, do you still wish to discuss that?
Yeah, real quick, we have, speaking of the charter, so I have from 1994 through now, all the changes that were voted and approved by the electorate, that need to be confirmed in the charter. And then in reading the charter since the last meeting, Article 11, which is entitled Amendments to Charter. Forget the Charter Review Committee for a minute. In addition to the method set forth in Article 12, which is the 5-year Charter Review Commission. So in addition to that, this charter may be amended by either of two methods. The council may, by an affirmative vote of 2/3 of its membership, submit to the electors any proposed amendment or amendments to this charter. So we do have the power of not waiting 5 years based upon this reading. Okay? So now here's just something to think about tonight. I don't want to belabor the point and have this meeting continue, but if we want to do something this year, even if it's as simple as cleaning up he versus she, just the simple stuff, we would have to adopt this and propose it and submit it to the election board on or before August 10th. Okay? But it can be done by ordinance, and so I'm throwing it out tonight. I'm happy to take the lead. I'm gonna match up the ballots versus what's in this charter, but if you want to start taking a look at some of this stuff, please do. And I think at a very minimum, we need to get something done and get it submitted for the November election, which is November the 8th. Okay?
By, what's that date in August?
August 10th is the last day for submitting issues for the ballot, and it's also for the candidates, who, whatever candidates are running, but that's already done.
I'm happy to work with you on that.
So, it could be a complete overhaul, which may be overwhelming. It may be you take it piecemeal and deal with some of the more pressing issues.
I'm happy to be on that.
So, I just wanted to bring it to your attention, that, because time goes fast with us. August 10th sounds like a long time, but you'd want to be able to do this and talk about it to where, the residents, if necessary, want to comment. But if it's talking about establishing committees and we don't even have in there, you suggested establishing a new committee. Well, none of that stuff's in here. I mean, we can do it because it doesn't compete with the Ohio Revised Code, but all that stuff should be laid out. That's it, thank you.
Okay,
Jim, I have one more thing. I wanted to go into executive session tonight, but I'm wondering if we should, I think, since our law director's not here, I think during a special meeting, you can go into executive session, but I'm not sure. I thought I read that somewhere
I don't think so.
today.
I'm not sure, but I can check with Elizabeth tomorrow. What did you want to go into executive session for?
121.22 G2, real estate.
121.
I mean, we can wait if we're allowed.
And that's the
Real estate property.
real estate.
And I don't think we need legal counsel to go in and talk about real estate. I don't know why we would need.
It's the acquisition of a piece of property, but I don't know if we have any details on the property itself.
I do.
Yeah.
But that's what it is.
Well-
It can be
You
done
wanna
at
do it,
an
or
executive
you wanna
session
go
if
on?
people, it will require a vote to go to executive
All
session.
right, then I make the motion to go into executive session for 121.22 G2.
Do we have a second?
Jacob, in the minutes, it has to state not only the section, but that is for the potential purchase of real property.
Possible
Yeah.
purchase, you're right.
What was the number, 121?
121,
G2.
G2.
and that is the
Executive session
acquisition of,
For purchase of property.
purchase of property.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We need a vote to see whether or not we will go into executive session.
Butler?
Linda did.
Yeah, I just don't know what we're going, what is it?
Real estate, purchase of real estate, possibly.
Which will
The
be
city's
discussed
pur-
in the.
the city's
executive
purchase
session.
of real estate
Yes.
Jordan?
Yes.
or acquisition.
Oakbridge?
Yep.
Smith?
Yep.
Thomas?
Yes.
Thrash?
Yes.
Vincenzo?
Yes.
All members in favor, motion carried.
Can we stay here?
Let's go into the, I get, yeah.
You want to take your phones now?
I would.
Are you telling me I can't?
No, I don't think it's a. Where are we going with this?
Jacob?
Why are we leaving?
I don't know.
Why are we leaving here?
We're going into the conference.
Where's the conference room?
But they're leaving.
I understand.
We do things differently here.
Well, if everybody's left this room, do we just stay?
Well, I was gonna leave.
I was gonna stay if you guys were leaving.
Yeah, so what are we doing? Jim?
Well, we're gonna have to get Jim out if we do.
Okay. Jim, how much time do you need, or you need time to shut down?
Yeah.
Okay,
Go.
well, then we'll go in the other room.
Let's go.
You haven't adjourned.
What's that?
You have not adjourned.
We're going to exec, okay.
That's right, we have to come back.
We will have to get back here to adjourn.
And leave electronics here. Jacob, don't let him do it.
I will not put that. I got you.
Juice and black, please.
Elaborate a little bit on the,
Madam Mayor, you don't.
Me?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you need?
It's gonna be it for a couple of minutes.
Yeah. No, I unfortunately need to go in and discuss, because I'm the only one that knows anything about this.
That's an issue.
It's an issue.
It's a huge issue.
That's the major issue.
So do we know
And
that
I
for
didn't-
sure?